Is entertainment getting too political? That is the question that has dominated media discourse in the past several years, with many audiences expressing frustration that a lot of movies/shows recently have been more focused on pushing a far-left agenda onto them, rather than entertainment. This brings us to the Daily Wire, who were vocal critics of this recent politicization of media. And so, a while back, they've announced that they're launching their own streaming service, dailywire+, where they'll produce movies/shows that'll act as an alternative to agenda-driven mainstream media. However, quite hypocritically, all they've done was create products that have the exact same problems that the current media landscape have. Movies/shows that funnel down to political propaganda. The only difference is that they're all right-wing, instead of being left-leaning. And the show that perfectly represents the Daily Wire's complete lack of self-awareness is the adult cartoon, Mr. Birchum. But before we get into the show itself, I'd like to ask you guys to subscribe to my channel, and to hit the bell for notifications. Also be sure to give this video a like, share, and comment, as it'll really help my channel out. Anyway, back to the review. So Mr. Birchum is an animated adult comedy, created by comedian Adam Carolla, which is based on his character of almost the same name, who was featured on the Comedy Central sketch show, Crank Yankers. The series was first pitched to Fox, way back in 2011, but was rejected obviously. But a little over a decade later, the Daily Wire came along and said this would make for the perfect vehicle to deliver our agenda, and greenlit it for its own streaming service, and thus, the Mr. Birchum show was born. And it's borderline atrocious. Mr. Birchum revolves around the character of the same name, who is a woodwork teacher at a local high school. The series follows him as he deals with tensions between himself and his liberal life and Twitch streamer son due to differing worldviews. Aside from that, he constantly expresses his frustration with how soft he believes the current generation of kids have become, and his situation goes from bad to worse when the school hires a JEDI named Mr. Elliot Compunzi, the show's strawman of a woke guy.
I'm a heteronormative, cisgendered white male, for which I apologize.
What?
Do I have consent to shake your hand?
No.
Who is determined to indoctrinate the students and bring Mr. Birchum down in a sea of generic adult animated comedies that all look identical and copy the same tired jokes and tropes from more successful shows in the genre, creating an unfunny pile of mediocre trash. Mr. Birchum somehow manages to immediately stand out as the absolute worst one yet. For starters, the animation is abysmal. While most modern adult comedy cartoons seemingly share the exact same bland art style, their actual animation is at the very least functional. Mr. Birchum, on the other hand, not only looks uncanny, but the animation in several scenes will get extremely choppy. Furthermore, the camera movements and the character animations are pitifully janky. It's clear that the Daily Wire has no respect for the medium of animation, and just views it as a cheap means to get their messages across. It unfortunately seems that the bare minimum was given for its budget, and that the production was rushed. As for the comedy, my goodness, it is horrible. There are certainly ways to make genuinely hilarious political jokes, but unfortunately, this is a series where the showrunners are too biased to be clever with its humor, opting to instead make political statements, while making flimsy attempts to present them as jokes. Unless you are one of those people who unironically thought that benshapiro, destroying college snowflakes way back in 2016, was the pinnacle of comedy, this will be some of the most cringe-inducing political jokes you will ever hear. Aside from the awful political humor, the rest of the jokes in this quote-unquote comedy just suck so hard. There are the usual low effort gags that are prominent in these sorts of shows, from the innuendos to the cheap shock humor, and there are also cutaway gags. Oh goody! And they are the ultimate nothing burgers, as the characters would just describe some random scenario, and then the show would cut to literally the exact situation, and that's it.
Planet Earth. Every night I close my eyes, it's whale birthing all over again.
Magnificent. as wondrous as it is to...
They're basically what people think Family Guy's cutaway gags are like. However, even that show can occasionally have some that are memorable, due to how creatively bonkers they can get with them. But the same can't be said about Mr. Birchum's cutaway gags, as they just end up perpetuating the stereotype that these types of jokes are just random, pointless, and above all, unfunny. Now it's time to talk about the characters, starting with Mr. Birchum himself. Probably the best way to describe Mr. Richard Birchum is a Mary Sue. Let me explain. Mr. Birchum is presented as someone who is always correct. Everything he says and does, according to the show, is right. And although he has some serious flaws that make him a bad person from an objective standpoint, the show never addresses them, because it has an agenda to push. So no matter how much of a jerk he is, or how poorly he treats the people around him, or how villainous his actions are, he is the one and true hero of the story, as he is presented as the one and only sane person in a corrupt world, falling apart due to wokeness. And every time he points this out, everyone around him stands up and claps, just like in those fake Reddit stories, and shower him with praise and admiration for opening their eyes to the truth. Meanwhile, the big bad lefties are left to wallow in their misery, as their mission to indoctrinate the masses with the evil woke agenda has failed. Not only does this characterization make the show come across as a vanity project, it also brings up a glaring issue. That being, that a character like Mr. Birchum doesn't work as a hero. In any other show, he would be the antagonist, or a comedic jerk for the audience to laugh at, because that is the best way to utilize a character like Mr. Birchum. Everyone who has criticized this show always brings up a certain incident from the first episode, as it perfectly summarizes the lack of self-awareness the showrunners have in their single-minded pursuit to push their worldview onto the audience. The incident in question is Mr. Birchum demanding his entire class to come over to his house on the weekend to do free labor for him, without letting their parents know. Kapansi then finds out about this, and reports it to the school board. Now, any sane person with basic morals will naturally see that Mr. Birchum is clearly the villain, and that Kapansi is doing the right thing, and they would be correct. Except according to the showrunners, these criminal actions are actually a good thing, because Mr. Birchum is teaching these kids the value of hard work, and Kapansi is just a selfish woke meanie poo-poo head for daring to go after him. Despite creating a situation where Mr. Birchum is objectively the bad guy, the showrunners will bend over backwards to present him in a positive light, and they'll try to make the audience hate Kapansi, even though he's the one who actually ends up being right. It's ironic how they try so hard to strawman the characters in an attempt to get the audience to feel a certain way about them, only to end up achieving the exact opposite. This is what happens when you attempt to force a single viewpoint onto the audience, while dismissing any other ones, acting as if reality is completely black and white, and that nuance doesn't exist, as people will easily see through your product as the blatant propaganda it is. It's fine if you want your show to have a conservative main character, but there are better ways to go about it. For example, let's compare Mr. Birchum to another conservative lead character from another adult cartoon, Hankhill. Even though he's conservative, and the show sometimes sneezes him to make fun of dumb liberals.
Hey, can you give me some money?
No.
Fascist.
But he is also, gasp! A flawed person who can be presented as being in the wrong, and is able to learn for the better from people he initially disagrees with, showcasing that he's not completely set in his ways. He's also not overly biased with his political views, as he can have some personal respect for a couple of Democrats, and be critical of some Republicans. This is because, unlike Mr. Birchum, Hankhill is an actual character, and not a vessel to be used by the showrunners to push an agenda. As for the rest of the cast, they're completely irrelevant, as all of them fall into one of three categories. One, being a part of Mr. Birchum's posse of yes men, who only serve the purpose of blindly supporting everything he says and does. Or two, starting off disagreeing with Mr. Birchum at the beginning of an episode, only to realize that he was right all along, and that they should have never doubted him. And finally, 3, the woke antagonist, who attempts to bring Mr. Birchum down, only to fumble at doing so. And that's all I got to say about Mr. Birchum. But we're not quite done yet, as unfortunately, another anti-woke cartoon has reared its ugly head. That one being The New Norm Show, aka the first animated sitcom on X.
The new norm ain't the same as the old norm. Everything's changing. This woke nightmare will end. Thank God for Elon Musk.
This show is just like Mr. Birchum, except with wowsier animation, as all it does is pander to old fart conservatives. You have the main character, Norm, who represents them perfectly by freaking out over the mere sight of pride colors. And yet, we the audience are expected to root for him. And of course, just like Mr. Birchum, he's portrayed as just a regular guy who is just trying to fight against the big evil woke people, who in this world are running the government. It's hilarious how in the promotional post on Twitter, it is claimed that the show will legalize comedy, implying that it is somehow banned by the woke crowd. And yet, it has some of the lamest jokes I have ever witnessed.
What's that?
Warning, offense.
I gotta ask, is this going to be a new trend? Anti-woke shows as opposed to woke media? If so, then I am not looking forward to the future of entertainment. Because as much as I dislike badly written movies/shows with far left politics, these anti-woke products are just as bad, if not worse. The people behind these shows can claim that they're saving entertainment all they want. However, in reality, they're really just another side of the same coin. Rather than being motivated by creativity and the love of storytelling, they're driven by spite towards the other side, and are blind to the fact that they're basically doing the exact same thing as they do, forcing their biased political views onto audiences. To be frank, I'm done with movies/shows that bottle down to political propaganda, whether they're left or right wing. I just want good entertainment. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a like, share, and comment. Also, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell for notifications. Anyway, see ya!